Welcome to Trueunseen Crime, where the truth hides in plain sight. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the unseen is always closer than you think. Police sirens slash through the icy Philadelphia night. Red and blue lights bounce off the brick houses of a quiet suburban street. Officers swarm a modest home, yellow crime scene tape fluttering in the wind. Inside, the living room is frozen in horror. Patricia lies lifeless on the floor, a pool of crimson spreading beneath her. And standing in the doorway, handcuffed, her daughter, Sandra, stares blankly ahead. Murder isn't always committed by enemies. Sometimes, the greatest betrayal comes from within. To outsiders, Patricia was the matriarch, the glue holding the family together. Her husband, James, spent long nights at work, trusting Patricia to keep order at home. Their daughter, Sandra, had built a seemingly stable life with her husband, Marcus. But Marcus wasn't the only influential man in Sandra's life. There was his younger brother, Eric. But Eric wasn't just Marcus' brother. He was also Patricia's dirty little secret. It started with whispers. Patricia meeting Eric at odd hours. Late-night texts that didn't add up. A glance that lingered too long. Sandra had her suspicions, but convinced herself it was nothing. Until the night, everything unraveled. Sandra came home earlier than expected, the front door slightly ajar. Laughter drifted through the dimly lit living room, her mother's laughter, mingled with a man's deep, familiar voice. She followed the sound, peering through the cracked doorway. What she saw shattered her world. Eric, shirtless, his arms wrapped around Patricia, who was whispering something in his ear. Sandra's breath hitched. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. The sight burned itself into her memory, a grotesque nightmare she would never escape. A storm of fury erupted. Plates shattered against walls. Insults flew like knives. Patricia, with ice in her voice, delivered the final cut. Jealous, bitter, and pathetic, you couldn't even keep your own husband's attention. Sandra lunged forward. A struggle ensued. Then bang. Patricia collapsed. But was Sandra the one who pulled the trigger? Not quite. As investigators pieced together the timeline, inconsistencies surfaced. The gunshot residue, the angle of the wound, and most chillingly, a witness account. A neighbor reported hearing shouting, but not just between Sandra and Patricia. There was another voice. A younger voice. That teenager was Melanie, Sandra's 14-year-old daughter. And she had secrets of her own. Melanie had spent months trapped in a twisted web. She wasn't just a bystander in this family's decay. She was a victim. A victim of Eric. Their relationship had started in the shadows, whispers exchanged behind closed doors. Eric, charismatic and cunning, had manipulated Melanie into believing it was love. But Patricia found out, and her fury was absolute. Flashback. Patricia's voice, laced with rage. I'm calling the police, and Eric is going to jail. Melanie, trembling, tears streaming. I can't let you ruin everything. A single gunshot. Melanie had killed her grandmother to protect her uncle, a man twice her age. Sandra, realizing the horrifying truth, took the blame. A mother protecting her child. But while detectives prepared to charge Eric with the exploitation of a minor and Melanie with murder, another piece of the puzzle came crashing down. James, Patricia's grieving husband, had a plan of his own. Convinced that Eric had corrupted his daughter and murdered his wife, James went on a dangerous mission for revenge. James tracked Eric down outside a local bar. Fueled by rage, he pressed a gun to Eric's forehead. But before he could pull the trigger, a voice cut through the night.
Sandra.
Gun in hand, hand shaking. If you shoot him, I'll shoot you. Sandra, blinded by her twisted love for Eric, had turned on her own father. The moment held. 3 lives, tangled in chaos, locked in a deadly standoff. Then sirens. The police swarmed in, disarming James and Sandra, bringing an end to the carnage that had destroyed a family. The trial and unraveling secrets. The trial was a media frenzy. Headlines blared. A family's nightmare, betrayal, forbidden love, and murder. Elaine, Patricia's estranged sister, emerged with shocking claims. She had long suspected Patricia's dark inclinations, presenting old letters and journal entries hinting at Patricia's obsession with power and control, not just over her family, but over Eric himself. Some believed Patricia had manipulated Eric just as much as he had preyed upon Melanie. Meanwhile, the community itself became divided. Some rallied behind James, believing he was the only true victim in this tragedy, a grieving husband and father who had lost everything. Others pointed fingers at Sandra, accusing her of failing to protect Melanie. The trial revealed layers of secrets, rumors of past affairs, whispers of debts Patricia had owed to dangerous people, and even speculation that Eric had blackmailed her into their twisted relationship. Eric, ever the manipulator, painted himself as a victim. He claimed Patricia had pursued him, that he had been seduced, not the other way around. He wept on the stand, pleading that he had never meant to hurt anyone. But text messages, recorded conversations, and Melanie's own testimony unraveled his lies. He was convicted, sentenced to decades in prison for his crimes against a minor and his role in the family's destruction. Sandra faced charges for obstruction of justice and for threatening her father. She wept as she was sentenced, her love for Eric a poison that had consumed her. And Melanie, a child caught in a nightmare, was charged with the murder of her grandmother. The court debated her fate for months. A victim or a killer? A brainwashed child or a cold-blooded murderer? In the end, she was sentenced to juvenile detention. She would remain behind bars until she turned 21, forever haunted by the weight of her deadly decision. James, broken and alone, moved away, unable to bear the ghosts of his past. The house where Patricia died was abandoned, a grim monument to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Neighbors whispered about the tragedy for years. Some claimed to see shadows in the windows at night. Others swore they heard Patricia's voice, still echoing through the empty house. But one thing remained certain. One family, one twisted web of lies, betrayal, and obsession. And one young girl left to face the weight of her deadly decision. The trial may have ended, but the ripple effects of the Philadelphia family tragedy were far from over. The city was still reeling from the revelations of twisted love, betrayal, and murder. James, the grieving husband, had disappeared from the public eye, choosing exile over facing the community that once embraced him. Melanie, the teenage murderer, sat in juvenile detention, counting the years until she would be free. Sandra, once a wife and mother, now served her sentence for obstruction, mourning the loss of the life she had destroyed. And Eric, the catalyst of it all, was locked away, but his shadow still loomed over everyone he had touched. But just when the city thought the horror had come to an end, a new revelation turned the case on its head. A secret letter emerged, one that would rewrite everything the world thought they knew about the murder of Patricia. The letter that changed everything. Months after the trial, a detective received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in shaky, hurried handwriting. It read, "She was never supposed to die. It was supposed to be him." There was no signature, no return address, just those chilling words. Who was the intended victim? Was it Eric? Was it James? And, most importantly, who wrote the letter? Police reopened portions of the investigation, scrutinizing every detail they had previously overlooked. One thing became clear: this murder had deeper roots than anyone imagined. As detectives dug deeper, they turned their attention to Elaine Thompson, Patricia's estranged sister, who had revealed Patricia's dark past during the trial. Elaine had stayed in the shadows for years, but new evidence suggested she may have known more than she originally let on. Investigators unearthed an old police report from 20 years ago, filed by Elaine against Patricia for an alleged violent altercation. In it, Elaine claimed that Patricia had tried to push her down a flight of stairs over an inheritance dispute. But the case was dismissed due to lack of evidence. A neighbor came forward, recalling a drunken conversation between Elaine and a friend weeks before the murder. "Patricia took everything from me. One day, someone's going to take everything from her." Had Elaine orchestrated Patricia's downfall? Did she manipulate Melanie, Sandra, or even James into turning against her sister? When confronted, Elaine's response was cryptic. "You reap what you sow." As the new investigation unfolded, Philadelphia found itself split in opinion. Some believed Elaine had been seeking revenge all along, secretly pulling strings to destroy Patricia's family. Others suspected James, still grieving, had been the real mastermind. Whispers spread through the town. What if James hired someone to kill Patricia, but it went wrong? What if Sandra knew more than she admitted? What if Melanie wasn't the one who pulled the trigger after all? Then came a bombshell. A second letter was found, tucked away in Patricia's old belongings. It read, "If anything happens to me, look at my husband first." The letter was dated 3 months before Patricia's death. Had Patricia feared for her life? Had she suspected James of plotting against her? And if so, why? The missing piece came from an unexpected source. A bartender from a local dive bar came forward with a shocking claim. James wasn't as faithful as he seemed. According to the bartender, James had been secretly involved with a younger woman, meeting her at the bar regularly. And that woman was Elaine's daughter, Patricia's own niece. She was young, barely out of college. He'd buy her drinks, tell her he was miserable at home. That Patricia made his life hell. When Elaine discovered the affair, she confronted Patricia in a heated argument, an argument that a neighbor overheard just days before Patricia's murder. Did Patricia write that letter because she had discovered James' affair? Had James been plotting to leave Patricia, or worse, kill her? The case took its final dark turn when forensic reanalysis of the crime scene found something disturbing. The gunpowder residue on Melanie's hands was inconsistent with the firing of the fatal shot. For months, the world believed Melanie had pulled the trigger. But if she hadn't, who had? The last witness. A new witness emerged, a neighbor who had been too afraid to speak before. On the night of Patricia's murder, she had seen someone fleeing the house. Not Sandra. Not Melanie. Not Eric. It was James. The evidence was undeniable. James had been at the scene. But had he fired the shot? When police finally tracked him down at a remote cabin in the mountains, James refused to speak. He only said one thing before his arrest. Patricia got what she deserved. James was charged with conspiracy and first-degree murder. The town was stunned. Had they all been fooled by the Grieving Husband Act? Melanie was granted a retrial, and within months, her murder charge was dropped. She was released, but forever haunted by the trauma of being accused of killing her own grandmother. Sandra, still in prison for obstruction, faced a new trial as well, this time as a victim rather than an accomplice. And Elaine? She vanished from public life, taking her secrets with her. The house where Patricia had died remained empty, unsold. Some claimed they still saw lights flickering at night. Others swore they heard whispers when they passed by. But one thing was certain. This was a house built on lies, betrayal, and broken vows. And even in death, Patricia refused to be forgotten. One family, one tangled web of secrets, and one shocking truth that took years to uncover. The courtroom was silent as Melanie, now 16, sat before the parole board. 2 years had passed since that tragic night, and she had grown from a frightened child into a hardened young woman. But the question remained, had she been rehabilitated, or had she simply learned to hide her demons better? A family destroyed by betrayal. A young girl convicted of murder. But was the nightmare really over? Melanie's case had captivated the public. While some saw her as a manipulated victim, others believed she had more darkness inside her than anyone had realized. But outside the courtroom, a different kind of horror was unfolding. Mysterious deaths and a lingering curse. 2 months before Melanie's hearing, Eric was found dead in his prison cell. Authorities ruled it a suicide. He had hung himself with a bedsheet. But his final days had been filled with paranoia, claiming he was being watched, that someone wanted him dead. "She's coming for me," he had whispered to another inmate. "I should have never." The word stopped there. The same week, another chilling event occurred. Sandra disappeared. Released on parole, she had been living a quiet, reclusive life in a small town outside Philadelphia. One evening, She simply vanished. Her car was found abandoned on a rural road, the driver's door left open. Her purse, phone, and keys still inside. And written on the dusty windshield in a childlike scrawl, "Justice." Police searched for weeks, but Sandra was never found. Was it revenge? A curse? Or had Sandra orchestrated her own disappearance? Then, the most disturbing discovery of all, Patricia's former home, the site of the original murder, burned to the ground. No one had lived there since the tragedy, but neighbors reported strange occurrences, doors slamming shut, lights flickering, whispers in the dead of night. The fire was ruled an arson. And among the ashes, investigators found something terrifying. A single, charred photograph. A picture of Patricia and Melanie. Was someone trying to erase the past? Or was it a message? A year after Sandra's disappearance, a letter arrived at a Philadelphia police station. No return address. No fingerprints. Just 6 pages of handwritten confession. "I've carried this secret for too long," it began. "It wasn't Melanie who pulled the trigger that night. It was me." The letter detailed the events of that evening, Patricia's cruel words, the moment of rage, the gun shaking in a trembling hand. But the final twist? James knew. He covered for me. He let his own granddaughter take the fall. Investigators were stunned. Had James, the grieving husband and father, manipulated the case from the beginning? Had he sent his own granddaughter to prison to protect himself? The letter ended with a haunting final line. "By the time you read this, I'll be gone." 2 days later, James' body was found in his home. A single gunshot wound to the chest. A pistol in his hand. A note beside him. Blood ties. Broken vows. Justice served. One family. One legacy of destruction. And one final mystery. Who really wrote the letter? Was it James? Was it Sandra, writing from the shadows? Or had someone else been pulling the strings all along? This is Trueunseen Crime, where the unseen reveals the unexpected. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because some stories refuse to stay buried.